Welcome to another mass panic inducing, monument destroying edition of Defending the Despised, the ongoing series where I unzip the Doctor Who episodes that crashed upon entry and found themselves with less than stellar reputations. It's finally time to talk about the very first two-part story of New Who, Aliens of London and World War III, two episodes I've wanted to talk about for a very long time. This story sees the Doctor take Rose back to modern day Earth, where they discover a sinister alien plot to destroy the planet for profit. However, ever since they aired in 2005, these two episodes have become infamous and largely hated for one reason. It's the episode with the farting aliens. But do these episodes really deserve to be hated for the flatulence of the Slitheen? Grab your pickled onions and let's defend one of the most infamous stories of the Russell T Davies era. From the very beginning, Aliens of London feels different. It starts off with a great sequence focusing on the realities of time travel, a common theme throughout Series 1. The Doctor takes Rose back to her home 12 hours after she left in the TARDIS. There's a relaxing and calm atmosphere as Rose goes upstairs to her flat. As she is returning home, the Doctor notices a missing persons poster of Rose, and the music punctuates the sinking feeling and sense of dread as the Doctor realises his mistake, because it's actually 12 months since she left. It brings to light the realism of disappearing off with the Doctor, since it was almost never addressed in classic Who. Hell, even Barbara and Ian don't seem to care about returning to Earth in 1965, despite leaving in 1963. There are real life consequences to travelling with the Doctor, and the beginning of Aliens of London makes these hit home. It's helped a lot by Jackie's response, which is an excellent scene, with Rose unable to explain her absence and Jackie's hurt turning to anger at the Doctor.
I am a doctor.
Prove it. Stitch this, mate.
It also plays into the common response of blaming the partner for a missing person, which is almost an innate response everyone has at seeing disappearances covered on the news. It's tragic to see that Mickey was blamed because he saw Rose run into the TARDIS, but couldn't tell anyone because they would have thought he was crazy or lying, so he had to suffer being the prime suspect and being ostracised from society. After dealing with the initial fallout of Rose's disappearance, the Doctor and Rose hang out on the roof of her flat when a huge spaceship flies over London and crashes into Big Ben. This is another great example of Series 1 showing what it could do with modern technology, as classic Who wouldn't have been able to successfully pull off this kind of special effect. It's similar to big budget disaster films that show iconic buildings and monuments being destroyed dramatically. It's bold and in your face, much like the end of the world. The Doctor and Rose can't get a good look at the crash site, so they have to resign themselves to watching it on the news like the rest of the population. This is an interesting scene because it shows the evolution of news and society since Classic Who ended in 1989. With the establishment of 24-hour news, people had more access to news channels, amplifying events such as 9/11 and Princess Diana's death, leading to cultural questions starting with, where were you during? The use of the news also helps move the plot forward, as the BBC reporter reveals that a body has been pulled from the wreckage and taken to Albion Hospital, leading to the Doctor investigating, as their character is compelled to do. Along with curiosity, one of the main, always present characteristics of the Doctor is their ability to take charge in a crisis, becoming a voice of authority. This is shown clearly in this episode when he arrives at the hospital, immediately assuming control over a squad of soldiers by just sounding like he's in charge. It harkens back to the third Doctor, who was the original man of action working with UNIT. I love the handling of UNIT in this episode, leaving the actual organisation off screen.
UNIT, United Nations Intelligence Task Force, good people.
How do you know?
Does he's worked for them?
Including it properly would have been too confusing for the new fans who didn't know what UNIT is, but it's a nice nod to Classic Who and keeps the continuity between the two different runs of the show. We soon find out that the alien pulled from the wreckage is actually a walking pig in a spacesuit. I really like how this subverts our expectations, since we expect some crazy, scary monster, but it just turns out to be a comically adorable little walking pig. However, it's then shot down by a soldier as it runs away, leading to a great line by the Doctor.
What did you do that for? It was scared!
It was scared.
I love the rollercoaster journey from tension to humour to anger to sadness, and Eccleston is fantastic as his rage turns into regret. Not only does it show the classic Series 1 edge, but it also shows us his extreme compassion. The Doctor really has some impressive standout moments in these 2 episodes. He has some great comedic lines.
I think you'll find the Prime Minister is an alien in disguise. That's never gonna work, is it?
No.
There's also a great scene where he works out the origins of the Slitheen and where they come from by narrowing down their characteristics. It shows just how quick thinking he is and tells us how extensive his knowledge of universal zoology is. It's another standout performance from Christopher Eccleston, who impresses more and more as you get further through Series 1. His intensity and angst over the moral dilemma are played just right. It's not overstated, but it's a peek into the Doctor's mindset, letting us know how serious he is about all of this. He's also great when he's making up reasons to keep the Slitheen at bay.
One more move and my sonic device will triplicate the flammability of this alcohol. Woof! We all go up, so back off.
One of the most common criticisms I see aimed at the Chibnall era is that it's too political, but Aliens of London and World War III have some of the most explicitly political moments in Doctor Who's entire history. The whole story is a blatant, stinging satire of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. After the 2001 terrorist attack on the Twin Towers, the US and UK launched a joint invasion of Iraq, because reports claimed that Saddam Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction. Since the horrible memories of 9/11 were still prominent, the invasion was easily justified, because people were terrified and trusted their governments to protect them. This is exactly what the Slitheen's plan is. By crashing a spaceship into Big Ben, they put the entire world on red alert and make everyone terrified enough to want to lash out at any possible threats. The Slitheen then manufacture false information of weapons of mass destruction to get the nuclear codes, planning to use them to destroy Earth and profit from it. Now, I'm not saying 9/11 was a false flag attack to justify a war over oil and profit, but this episode shows how easily such a chain of events can be manufactured by those in power. It's incredibly relevant even today, with the idea that politicians can easily manipulate public opinion through the news and social media. It's crystal clear what Russell T Davies was doing with this episode, and it's surprising that the BBC even allowed it to go out, especially because of their own controversial role in the Iraq War. I find it incredible how heavily political this episode is, especially when you consider how topical it was at the time. However, there is a lot of political naivety and oversimplification. The spaceship crashing creates a national emergency, but the Prime Minister is missing, having been killed by the Slitheen. This means the highest ranking member of the government takes charge, but the episode puts Joseph Green in charge, who is
Chairman of the Parliamentary Commission on the Monitoring of Sugar Standards in Exported Confectionery.
Whilst this is a funny line, it makes absolutely no sense because he is so low level, rather than being, say, Minister of Defence. The rules are kind of murky when it comes to exactly who takes over during an emergency with a dead Prime Minister, but I don't think you have to be physically present in London. It's a rare misstep from Russell T Davies, who usually has very sound and tight scripts. But to be fair, this is a goofy, campy sci-fi show aimed at families. It's not exactly the thick of it.
Because we're not buying it. Okay, it's funded by taxes.
Sorry then.
Great, the triple. I'm a nurse killer, a banker, and now I'm raising taxes!
Okay, let's address the giant green alien in the room. The biggest problem everyone has with this two-parter is the Slitheen, the infamous antagonist of the story, known for their farting. And that's the thing, people hate this entire story for the farting. If this was a Zygon story, it would probably be a classic. But I actually really like the Slitheen. I think they're fantastic villains. If you overlook the farting, they're actually quite unsettling. It's genuinely believable that they're aliens in human skin. The fact they seem to fart might seem comical to us, but it's really a result of technology that's completely beyond us. They're quickly cemented as a physical threat when Margaret kills the civil servant, meaning we feel the threat when the cast are hunted by the Slitheen. World War III opens with Slitheen chasing the Doctor, Rose and Harriet Jones through Downing Street, and even though the CGI is dated, I like how the Slitheen move. The Slitheen Slitheen are shown to have a strong sense of smell for hunting, meaning we feel the tension and the threat is real. Honestly, the only issue with the Slitheen is the farting. The overall concept is so interesting. They've already invaded and are in positions of power. They're for the long con, about to cash out. Infiltrating the government just to nuke the planet and sell it for profit is such a great concept, and I feel it deserves more love. Also, when it comes to the farting, it's important to remember that Doctor Who is a family show with a huge child demographic. The farting is there to be funny and entertaining for kids, lightening up the story and avoiding it from becoming too bogged down by its deep political narrative. I'll admit that it's a poor attempt at comedy and hurts the Slitheen in the long run, meaning they're more infamous than iconic. But Doctor Who should create memories, and the Slitheen certainly did that. Everyone knows the story with the farting aliens, just like how previous generations remember the story with giant maggots and the story with the green bubble wrap monsters. After being locked in the cabinet for almost the entirety of World War III, the Doctor has to rely on Mickey to save the day. The only way to stop the Slitheen is to blow up Downing Street itself, but this becomes a moral dilemma, as it could kill Rose. It's reminiscent of Clive in the opening episode, who tells Rose the Doctor has one constant companion, death. It shows the dangers of travelling with the Doctor, but to be honest, the whole world would be destroyed if the Doctor doesn't take action, so it doesn't really matter if his plan puts her at risk. Even so, the dilemma is immediately resolved by Harriet Jones, the hapless yet headstrong and determined MP.
Harriet Jones, MP Flydale North.
She commands that they carry out the plan because she is the highest ranking person in the room. I like Harriet Jones. She's used as comic relief in the first part, but the second part establishes her as smart, brave and loyal to her country. She's just a decent overall person. Well, until the Christmas invasion. The conclusion to the story also requires an extreme amount of suspension of disbelief, as the Doctor instructs Mickey to hack into the unit website, where he can launch a missile from a submarine off the coast of England. Yes, that's right, as long as you have the password, you can launch devastating missiles from the comfort of Internet Explorer on your old computer in a council flat, without a VPN. As much as I love how goofy this is, it's not how these things work. But this is Doctor Who, suspension of disbelief is a requirement, so I can look past this one. The character development throughout the story is great. It builds up all four main characters, even Jackie and Mickey, who had limited screen time in the Series 1 opener. Not only does the two-parter further develop Rose's relationship with the Doctor, but it also gives us a further understanding of her relationships with Mickey and Jackie, with Jackie hugely protective of her daughter after a 2-month disappearance. However, the best character development of the story is Mickey, who was shown to be a bit of a loser in Rose. In this two-parter, we find out that he has been relentlessly reading up on the Doctor for the last year, finding out about his previous adventures on Earth and his involvement with the unit. He also gets to save the day, showing that he's not useless after all, and that he's capable of being a hero, rather than a schmuck. In the final scene, the Doctor even offers for Mickey to join him and Rose, but it's Mickey that turns him down. It's great to see the Doctor start to respect Mickey a bit more. He even covers for him by pretending that Mickey isn't capable enough to travel with them. It's a great final scene, and I love how the focus is on Mickey and Jackie rather than Rose and the Doctor, ending on a shot of the two Earthbound characters instead, once again showing us the realities of time travel. As an introduction to two-parters, Aliens of London and World War III are certainly an interesting choice. It's the first time we get to experience the pacing of a 90-minute story, with a cliffhanger to separate the two episodes. It's clear that writer Russell T Davies thought a lot about what his first cliffhanger would be, especially after a lot of classic Who cliffhangers were shoehorned in because the episode had hit 20 minutes and needed an ending. Aliens of London manages to avoid this problem with a well-crafted and clever cliffhanger, with 3 endings all in one, pitting each protagonist in danger. It's a great source of tension, and it probably blew some new viewers' minds that a Doctor Who episode could even end this way. Sure, it's a little bit slow nowadays, but I think that it's such a clever and dramatic conclusion that does a great job introducing two-part stories. I just don't see why everyone is so harsh on this two-parter. It gets so much hate for the fart jokes, and maybe it's justified, but I really like this story. It's really rewarding and interesting, you just have to overlook the fart jokes. And sure, the CGI is dated, but it's good for early New Who standards. It was TV in 2005 after all. It's not going to look like Avatar, especially after they spent most of the effects budget on the end of the world. Is it camp? Yeah, but every Series 1 episode is. I enjoyed it as a kid, and I imagine a lot of people who grew up with the Davies era did too. It's a fun adventure as body snatchers chase the Doctor around Downing Street. It's silly, and these kinds of silly stories are often blasted by hardcore fans, despite the fact that it's these kinds of stories that give Doctor Who its wacky, fun charm, and often capture the imagination of young viewers. A lot of Series 1 probably tried to be silly to keep young viewers interested. It's good that later series matured, realising that you don't need to dumb things down for kids to enjoy them. But Series 1 had so much riding on it that they couldn't risk losing the young demographic. It's fun and engaging from start to finish, and it's similar to some classic Who stories with the simplicity and naivety of its narrative and themes. The whole story of aliens faking other aliens and infiltrating Downing Street by inhabiting political leaders is brilliant and incredibly satirical, so the production team probably had to paint the story in broad, farcical tones, with outlandish, farting aliens so that they could actually get away with it. I hate to say this for the billionth time, but once you move past the fart jokes, it's easy to enjoy the story. The character development is compelling, the overall plot arc is interesting, and the acting is sublime. I have no shame in saying I enjoy Aliens of London and World War III. I always have. They're easily a step up from The Unquiet Dead, but they're definitely overshadowed by the immaculate episode that followed. But what do you think? Is this two-parter an underrated gem, or should it be thrown in the path of a sub-harpoon UGM A4A fired from a computer in a council flat? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.